Alright, so Konami just announced their new game mechanic for the sixth, I guess, phase of Yu-Gi-Oh!, whatever you want to call it. And hopefully you're not too tired about hearing about this. I just wanted to talk about it, put my 2 cents out there. I'm really not happy about this at all, but I'm going to try to not be too negative here. You've probably already had this explained to you in other videos, so I'm not going to focus too much on how it works, though I'll just go through it quickly in case you haven't seen it before. So the new monsters are extra deck monsters. They're called Link monsters, and you summon them by sending this material, whatever it says, to the grave. So they're probably closest synchros, I guess, in that respect. But they don't need a tuner, unless it says it needs a tuner. They'll probably come out with those eventually. Anyways, these monsters, the first time you summon from the extra deck, you have to summon in the new Link zone. They don't really have a good picture. This is probably the best one. So I'll zoom in on this. There's 2 Link zones. You can summon in either one, and that becomes yours, and then the other one is reserved for your opponent. And then other extra deck monsters cannot be summoned in these 5 unless the Link monster connects to one of those. So this one, for example, it turns on 2 of yours, this one, and it also turns on one of your opponents. And each of the monsters says how many links it has, and then it points to them on the card. So this one has 3, and then it points to 3 spots. And there's a few other examples, like this one points to 1, it's link 1, and this one's 3. So it points sideways, so if you summon it in one of the 5 main monster zones, like you summon it, if you summon this one and then you summon this here, then you can summon in these 2 spots then. So you're just like unlocking your zones basically so you can play. The problem with this is like this just kills a huge amount of decks because you basically can't summon more than one extra deck monster unless you're summoning Link monsters. And also, if you are summoning Link monsters to unlock your zones, you're clogging up your zones, and then you can no longer summon everything you want to. So, for example, windups, I think, are just totally dead. I don't think there's any way you could make them work with the new rules. Because if you summon this to open up 2 zones, that's only 2 monsters. You can't play windups with only 2 Xseed monsters on the board at one time. And like if you summon this guy, for example, to try to open up other spots, that's taking up a spot. You still only have 3 at that point if you summon this. And you've already committed 5 resources to summoning, so 2 for this, and 3 for this. So it's, yeah, decks like that I think are just not doable. Or sorry, I meant 4, because 2 for this. This is 3 links, but it only requires 2 monsters to make. Sorry, that is a little confusing on their part, I think. I can kind of see where Konami's coming from, where they're trying to like nerf the extra deck mechanic, but the problem is they're only hitting decks that use the extra deck. So decks like Infernoids, which is one of the best decks right now, just get off scotch-free because they don't need the extra deck. So they're basically trying to bring the level of the game down, I think, with this, but they're basically just taking an axe and hacking away at it, and just random decks are dying. And then other decks are they just miss them, and they're totally fine, and nothing happens to them. I know it's not the best analogy, but that's what came to mind. So I'm really annoyed because Windups is one of my favorite decks. That's dead. Quantums, that's probably dead. I could maybe. It depends on. So there is a new facet to the game where you have to try to incorporate the Link monsters to try to get your old decks to work, and maybe that'll make the game interesting once we get enough of these. I think at the beginning it's going to be really painful though, and you're basically going to have to play specific decks that can function with this. So like Infernoids, Cosmos, ritual decks like Herald. I've heard people say Mermails. You could play that. Personally, I'm probably gonna go back to ninjas, because that does not really need the extra deck. It's just really disappointing. I feel like each of the previous game mechanics added something to the game, and it just kind of expanded the game, while this one is taking away a huge part of the game. Basically, this is trying its hardest to make it so the last 10-ish years of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just never happened. It just wants to say, oh yeah, everything from 5Ds and Zexal and ARC-V, that didn't happen. Just pretend it didn't happen. We're going back to GX. Speaking of GX, you can play Heroes. That's probably really good actually, because Dark Law would prevent monsters from going to the graveyard. That might prevent these from being summoned. I don't know how that's going to be ruled. Oh, also, I forgot to say, they moved the pendulum zones. So they got rid of the pendulum zones and they made the outside spell and trap zones half and half, so you can use them as pendulum zones or as spell and trap zones. Which I like, because I think that probably helps a little bit nerf the pendulum mechanic. It's of course the whole link thing is nerfing the pendulum mechanic in and of itself. I'm assuming that monsters put on the extra deck cannot be pendulum summoned except for to this zone or zones that are linked up. That's my guess. As far as the impact on the game, I think this is actually a huge mistake by Konami as far as looking at it from their perspective. I think this is going to be the biggest exodus of Yu-Gi-Oh players ever. Like, I'm not trying to be too dramatic. The game is going to be fine. It's popular enough, and there will be enough players that it'll still keep going. But I think Konami is actually going to lose a noticeable amount of money just because players are going to quit. Because they can't play their decks that they've put money into and grown attached to. Like me, I have a deck out of my 3 main decks: Windups, Ninjas, and Quantums. One of them, at least, is totally unaffected by this, but the other 2 are just dead. And if you're a player who's, say you only played Windups and Quantums, you're gonna have to try to play something new because this game mechanic just kills pure decks. Maybe we'll see a new format where we have current format follows this rules and a separate format follows older rules. I would like to see that personally. I'm a big fan of older formats anyways. I wish that there was more avenues to play in those. The Dragon Ruler format is really fun, and I like playing full power windups. And then there's the obvious stuff that everybody likes playing, like Goat format and Teledad. Oh, by the way, if you're a fan of old formats, I've got something special on the way. I'm going to be uploading the first video this weekend, so be on the lookout for that. So now that I've talked about the game changing a little bit, I think I wanted to look at a couple of the new cards that they've announced. So this one is the trump card, and it seems to be one of the better ones for opening up zones because it's got the diagonals, and I haven't really seen that on the other link monsters, but it does have the downside of giving your opponent 1 link. And it's also really generic, so it just needs 2 effect monsters, so that's most monsters. So this one will probably be pretty popular. The effect is fine. You can negate a targeting effect, so it's like a Karen Gorgon, and it gets pumped up to a lot if you have monsters linked to it. It's pretty easy to probably get 2 monsters to link to it on your own side of the field. So, and then there's this one, which only needs 1 normal monster, not too many normal monsters, and it only opens up 1 zone, but it's very low investment, so it's kind of that's one option. This is the one that a lot of people have been talking about because it's 2 or more monsters. So people have been talking about using like Venus. I got that idea from House of Champs. So yeah, this one is not restricted to effect monsters, and the fact that it goes sideways is good if you want to try to open up more of your zones. And then there's this one. This one does 2 diagonally without giving your opponent 1, so that's pretty good. But it takes 2 Earth monsters, so it's not quite as generic. Oh yeah, and this one has no effect. This one has a bad effect, basically. Well, adding 1 Earth monster from your grave to your hand is pretty good. Also, they don't have defense mode. I've kind of glazed over that earlier. I think that's weird. Like, What was the point of that? I guess they have to do that because they have the arrows pointing, so you can't shift the arrows. I think it'd be more interesting though if you could shift the arrows, so that way you could be pointing to different zones depending on where you placed it. So you can put it in attack mode to get specific zones and defense mode to get other ones. I think that would be way more interesting. But I guess they've limited themselves from doing that. They're lost. And then here's another card. This is one I wanted to talk about for sure. This is just adorable. Rescue Ferret. I love this card. And its effect is actually pretty good. I think it's not as good as Rabbit or Cat, but better than Hamster. So you shuffle this card into your deck, special summon any number of monsters from your deck whose total level equals 6 into linked zones on your field, except for itself, and their effects are negated and destroy them during the end phase. So yeah, you can just use this to make like any synchro basically, or a rank 3. So it's pretty cool, but you do need to have 2 zones linked up. So if you have like this, for example, or the other one with 2 pointing, you just summon them into those 2 zones and then combine them and use one of those open zones for the monster. I'm assuming you can summon monsters into the zone after you remove them from the field for an Exceed or Synchro. If you can't, that would be painful. And then I just glazed over most of these, but there's a couple I wanted to point out. Here's a Trap Hole card, Break Off Trap Hole. When a monster is link summoned, a link monster is link summoned, destroy all unlinked monsters in the field. So that seems like a really powerful Trap Hole card, because it's so easy to summon a link monster. So yeah, that could definitely be an impactful card. And then I wanted to point out they have like dark Lightsworn monsters, which is just really interesting. So this is the most interesting one. Obviously, it's Dark Judgment Dragon, which is kind of cool. The effect isn't as good, but it's yeah. So I guess they're trying to make a new variant of Lightsworn, which they're calling Twilight Sworn. It makes sense. Twilight was what they called the dark version, the chaos version back in the day. So that's it for this video. So I guess, yeah, I think this is bad news, but we'll have to wait and see how the game develops with this new edition. I'm not going to quit, though this might cause me to play a lot less. We'll have to see. It definitely made me question my desire to play Yu-Gi-Oh, that's not a good sign. Actually, now that I think about it, you could maybe do wind up still, because maybe instead of making Exceed monsters, you could just make Link monsters instead, because this is, for example, is generic, and this one is generic, so maybe you could just Link summon instead of Exceed summon. That might work. So I guess on second thought, it's not as bad of a change as I thought. I don't like it still, but maybe you could make it work. I think it's just going to take some creativity. Anyways, hopefully you guys all enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to check out some other stuff.